very happy to welcome everyone to yet another session of the Whole Health Macrobiotic Forum. What could be better? I mean, and today we are so privileged and so fortunate to have as our guest the inimitable Michael Rossoff. So, Michael, maybe I could say, first of all, that I count you as a friend. And in addition, I admire you very much because you're erudite. That's the word. Your skill, your lack, your ability, your another thing I want to say about you, Michael, is what a kind person you are. And I really appreciate that because you got the bedside manner. So I just want to change my view to speaker, and now we're ready to go. Michael, do you need me to say anything more about you or to introduce you otherwise? If not,
No, no,
I-
no.
I'm going to move over to Lenny, who's I know your dear friend. I asked Lenny to begin the show and to present Michael and get us going. Thank you, Lenny, for your help.
Yeah, I hope we have some other people who are joining us still, or
Oh,
we don't
sure.
know.
Oh, yeah. No, no, I'm sure.
Okay.
But
Anyhow, here we are. It's Sunday morning in Asheville, North Carolina. Michael Rossoff, who is our presenter today, he is a neighbor of mine and lives about 2 miles away. Also, Michael and I first met in 1969 in Boston, Massachusetts, where we arrived at a very similar time to study macrobiotics. In those days, there were group homes that were referred to as study houses. And Michael and I were in the same study house in Brookline, Massachusetts, where we attended lectures at a center downtown in Boston that Michio Kushi gave, and then there were also teachings in the study house itself. And who was ever in charge of the study house presented their perspective, an additional complementary view to what Micho and Aveline were teaching. And this was a very kind of formative time, both for us in our early 20s, 20s and years old, but in the late 60s, at a time when the first summer that we were in Boston was the summer of the Woodstock Festival. And there were a number of our friends who attended the Woodstock Festival, but we cut our hair short and stopped using psychedelics and couldn't imagine that we would be able to find the food at the Woodstock Festival that we had come to Boston to experience. Anyhow, Michael and I have been friends ever since then, and I'm glad to have his expertise shared with Gnat's forum participants. I know Michael has been on here before. His background in macrobiotics, nutritional counseling, oriental medicine, acupuncture, herbology, and overall awareness of people's health and well-being and advising so many thousands,
Mhm.
tens of thousands, I don't know, thousands of people over the 50 years that he's been practicing as a healer, as a counselor, as a coach for so many people with all kinds of issues. So Michael's here today to talk a little bit about his background, his inspiration about being a healer, and what he's able to add to the kind of macrobiotic medicine chest that has complemented what his studies in Boston led him to a fuller view of a person's well-being and what kind of factors are in play with improving your health and well-being. So, Michael, what is your inspiration, impetus to get involved in this whole world of self-development and healing?
I'll keep it pretty brief, but um, back in those days, I was in the hippie world and the wild rock and roll world, and searching. It was my phase. It was a search for something beyond the limited, obvious world that I had been raised in, and I ended up in Boston in a very fortuitous way because I didn't know anything. I didn't ever hear about macrobiotics or Kushi at that time, but I had an older brother who was very tuned into all the esoterics going on in the world or in America. And he was a follower of a guru, Corporal Singh, and my brother invited me to go with him up to New England to visit different ashrams. And I saw this as a way of getting out of my limited world and unhappy world, really, with drugs and rock and roll and poor eating, but not knowing what to eat and eating less and less because I knew I didn't like so many foods. And so I quit my drugs, went up to New England, and got all the way up to Vermont, where there was an ashram that was not just vegan, but macrobiotic. And that's where I started macrobiotics. And I spent a week there working in the gardens, stopped all my drugs. And I hadn't gotten my hair cut yet, but I did find out about Kushi and macrobiotics. And I hitchhiked to Boston and found macrobiotics in a few days. That is, found Jim Ledbetter, who my brother had known. And he led me to invited me to come to a lecture with Michio on a Sunday afternoon in Brookline. And I thought I was very not obvious sitting in the back, but lo and behold, um, I was recognized and I came up and introduced myself to Michio. And this was a telltale moment in my experience with macrobiotics. Um, Curiously, he had me turn around, felt my spine, and said, "You've got this and this wrong." And then he said, "Come to Boston, do macrobiotics." And he saw that I wasn't responding in the way he expected because I was questioning whether that was a motivation for me to do that. So he said, "Come to Boston and experience macrobiotics for 1 year, go through the 4 seasons, and then decide if this is what you want to do." And that was the inspiration for me to stop everything else I was doing in my life, sold my car, gave away my drugs, came up to Boston, and that's when Lenny and I met. And yes, in the meantime, I did get my hair cut. I had long hair and all of this. And I never turned back. I haven't had drugs since, and I'm very happy to have been committed to it. It's been an amazing journey with a lot of ups and downs and conflicts and challenges. But I was inspired by the teaching that was more philosophical. It was not really greatly oriented towards healing. Michio always presented some of that, but I never took that to heart in the way I did about the yin yang and the philosophy and change and um, back and front, all of these ideas that really resonated with me. So he did bring, I stayed for 3.5 years in
So that
Boston.
first 12 months that he asked you to stay,
Right,
what was your experience? Because that was an interesting
right,
opportunity. He didn't say you had to come or that if you, didn't come, but it was more discover on
right.
your own. What did you discover during the first
Okay, so
12 months?
um, so I worked I got some odd jobs working in gardens, and then as a gardener, then I got the job in one of the only macrobiotic restaurant then, Sinai. And I started out as dishwasher and worked my way up, and then I became the cook, and I trained ultimately someone else to be the cook, and it was a nice um, camaraderie among folks, and everyone was interested in the same vision about changing our lives and really finding meaning beyond the materialism of the age and doing that without drugs. And so to me, it was very, very deeply inspiring. Meanwhile, I did get sick that first year. I got a discharge in the macro terms of skin discharge. And it turned out to be scabies, which is very irritating. And I was determined to have macrobiotic diet heal me from it. And I let it get worse and worse and worse and worse. And so finally, I did go and get a prescription. My parents insisted I should see a doctor. And so I got a prescription and put it on, and it went away. But that was the only sickness I had in macrobiotics
Hmm.
of any significance.
But there was something that happened in that first year that convinced you that it was worth staying.
Yes, and so it really is the heart of the teachings, which we could call not just Michio Kushi's, but George Osawa's. And I read a lot of Osawa's books, and um, all I can say is it struck me very deep as a vital, inspiring truth that I could grow from that to understanding more about life and and the world and others. Um, my only time that so gradually I became inspired in the healing side within that teachings from Michio. And he brought in, once in a while, he'd bring in another teacher or person. So he brought in from England, I'm sure he was coming to America, uh, the teacher who I went on to study acupuncture with, and that's J.R. Worsley. And I was very inspired once I really got this vision of what acupuncture is. Um, I just knew something deep. I'm sure I must have had a past life in the Orient, and it just struck me so deeply. And the needles were like magical uh, elements that could be used to create uh, mystical healing. I don't know. To me, it was just amazing. And um, so I hadn't had acupuncture, and it was going to take quite a while till I went to acupuncture school, had some treatments there. And then when I came back to America, I was living in the DC area, and acupuncture was illegal everywhere in America except one jurisdiction, which was Washington, D.C. And so there was a center that had started, and it where they got these Chinese doctors, most who could not speak any English, and these Chinese girls who dressed in white gowns to look like nurses who would translate for the Chinese doctors. And I worked at the first center, not doing acupuncture, but just being an administrator there. Hundreds of people came from around the country every day wanting treatments. And I observed these acupuncturists doing their treatments because I was wearing a white gown too, and I could go in and watch these treatments. And a few of them spoke English. And one who had actually, even though he's Chinese, he studied in Japan, had a very nice technique. I just could see his more subtle techniques. And I asked him to give me a treatment. And it was an amazing treatment. So it, the, I knew the power of acupuncture intellectually, but then I knew it in my own body. And so
So
from,
let me
yeah,
just interrupt. Anyhow, Ganat, you'll interrupt us if there's some questions from the audience, from the
Oh,
participants.
you do have one burning question, Michael. You opened your mouth and you said, well, the core teaching of macrobiotics, and then you went on to say how amazing macrobiotics is. What is the core teaching of macrobiotics?
oh, this is a
Sorry.
the core teachings are take responsibility for your life and have a way of understanding how to take responsibility. I think that's the key. It isn't just take responsibility and good luck. That this yin yang is a way to navigate, to analyze what we're feeling and how we're responding to things and how we can alter that balance by our choices of food, activity. For me, I would add acupressure. There's many ways we can alter ourselves, that we're always in the midst of change, and how to um, have some control of that change conceptually and practically makes us become more free, so that we're not constantly being pushed by other extremes going on in our lives or in the world. And therefore, even things like, to jump to the present, Donald Trump and what's happening here in America is very upsetting. But can we still maintain our center? To me, that's equally important, and part of the message of macrobiotics is how to keep our core power and not lose that over emotional extremes.
But in terms of that, Michael, when you were in Boston before you went to study acupuncture, what part of that did you discover in the macrobiotic community, in that whether it was the teachings, the books, the camaraderie, the social development? How did you see that unfolding as well as being taught? Just what you described as the core.
Right. Well, I saw, to me, it was unfolding because everyone was excited and um, interested in the similar concepts, and trying to analyze and decipher and communicate them and support each other in those concepts. And so that just deepened it. It was inspiring because everyone had a different angle on it. And so I was very inspired by it. I enjoy listening to people's views and learning from others. And I always have. Even in consultations, I still learn from people in many different ways. But to me, the community in Boston was unsatisfactory. It became too much of a believership in Micho. And I admired Lenny for staying in Boston and holding his ground and doing productive, meaningful work. I felt, because my interest went more and more towards healing, that uh, I couldn't develop my own healing skills and abilities under
Mm.
the influence of Micho. And that's why I left and went to Washington, D.C., my hometown. And others left too. Murray Snyder left and went to Baltimore, and just wanting to share it to a bigger
So
audience.
you said that in those days, macrobiotics wasn't about just healing and health and cancer cures, but
Hmm.
that somewhere along the way, it became a motivation for you to focus on the healing aspect of
Right.
whatever principles that you were learning. Could you say something about what was your motivation to be a healer?
That's a big question, really. I think my motivation was wanting to help others. I wanted to do that when I was younger, and I knew I had no skills to do that, no, nothing to offer people. And even when I went to college, I majored in zoology, which was basically biology. I took anatomy, physiology, cytology, the study of cells, histology, the study of tissues. I mean, embryology. I loved all of that science, but I had no interest in going to medical school. I just never thought of that as a path. But with macrobiotics, it took my science understanding of the body to really realize that there was another path of healing that was Oriental medicine, that was not Western medicine. And so I'm glad I went this way. And um, I've always had I used to be very shy as a child, extraordinarily shy. I took a speech class in college, and I could barely get in front of the other 8 students in the class and talk in front of them. It was so, I was so nervous. And um, I have a twin brother, and he was equally shy and nervous. And he never really did any public talking. He was a writer, but um, he was amazed that I could, and I realized why I could was because I finally had, through macrobiotics, something to offer that
Mm.
was, I felt, of greater value and a greater need for me to share that to others in the world, that I was willing to get through my fear of being in front of people and do that. And my brother always said, I can't believe you would do that. It's amazing. But it really took that push of feeling that there was so much value in macrobiotics, and I still do, you know. Uh,
So, in terms of the healing that was being taught and the health diagnosis and treatments in Boston, within the macrobiotic kind of curriculum, there were a lot of references to Oriental medicine. And Micho and apparently Osawa before him used facial diagnosis as the primary basis of their diagnostic skills. And that's what a lot of people learned. And they used to have the drawings of the face with the horns and the weird creatures coming
right,
out. You saw that as only a portion of the diagnostic techniques. How did Oriental medicine and Chinese medicine complement that? What else did you add to that
right.
kind of toolkit?
So macrobiotics was really very limited, because of Michio's teachings in terms of diagnosis. He may have been very good at it, but it wasn't transmittable. You can't say you see horns out of people's head. So that's not transmittable that way. And s- um, and it was never tested. Does a line here or a wrinkle there really mean this or that organ isn't working well or diseased? It was never tested out rigorously. That I feel macrobiotics missed the point with that. In any case, there are other methods of diagnosis, classically in Oriental medicine, that are very useful. And that visual diagnosis that Michio is teaching is one of the four classic means of diagnosis. But there's touch, there's smell, even with visual, like what do you, and looking at it, one of the most important, besides the skin and the body and such, is tongue diagnosis. Classically, the two most used forms of diagnosis were tongue and pulse. And pulse was really for acupuncture, to measure the 12 meridian energies and balance within those. And I learned that and I still do it. Uh, and it's an amazing form of diagnosis.
Do any medical doctors understand? They do the pulse just to get the heartbeats. And
Right.
are they aware of and do they concur at all? Because there are doctors who are also acupuncturists. Do they say that there is a real pulse there, or is it more kind of a projection of the doctor?
Yeah. I don't know the answer to that fully because I really don't have that kind of conversation with doctors. Early on, I went to NIH and met with the head of um, forgot which department now, but really, and I brought up about pulses, and he said to them, there's no difference in this 1 inch or 1.5 inches on the wrist, where that there can be a different pulse sensations on the same artery. So actually, I'm sure some have now. Numerous doctors have studied
It is hundreds of
Oriental
years
medicine.
of Chinese medicine that they recognize these pulses. And that's
Yes,
what you've learned.
right. And then there was tongue diagnosis, which was really for herbalist. So the herbalist and the acupuncturist really had separate practices. They didn't do both. And it's only in modern times when Mao Zedong said in 1950s, we're going to merge everything, both forms, and started 4 schools in China to teach the merged history of Chinese medicine and take out the esoterics and the magical mystery part of Chinese medicine. But fortunately, the text couldn't be burned, and so the texts have a lot of great wisdom in it that was not taught necessarily to the modern Chinese doctors, even though they are great practitioners of what they do. So all I'm saying is tongue diagnosis is really when we say herbs, we're saying food. And so it's really about broadly diagnosing the digestive tract. But classically, it's also about diagnosing the five main organs of the body. And those are heart and lungs, pancreas, liver, and kidneys. Did I do five? Yes, those are the five. And so they're just different.
Are these things that people could learn? Like you went to school and got a degree and
Right.
license and so forth, but are these techniques that people could use to expand their diagnostic skills? Like tongue diagnosis in particular?
Um, tongue diagnosis has the most potential for those who want to go on and do macrobiotic counseling. It's there's some great books with color pictures and everything, and it may be too much for some people to jump into, but it's not complicated. It's subtle, and it depends on not just the obvious, but on colors. And I'm colorblind, so it's also a challenge for me. So I see it. I use it a little differently. That's all, just subtly differently. But I've never taught in a general public audience class. I've never given a class on Oriental diagnosis. And I've told other counselors over the decades that I'm against it. And I'm against it because it frightens people. It makes them worry. Oh my God, I have this line. What does this mean? And they just become so intensely negative about their life, their health, their healing. And it doesn't serve a purpose. Its purpose is, and how I've used it, is to get clarity on the underlying causes of their problems so I can talk about the problem, not, oh, you have this line, that means this, and therefore, you're in trouble. It's very, my goal is to inspire people, but with clarity of what they have to work on. And so I do teach diagnostics in a more advanced, people dedicated to wanting to do counseling. That's where it should be taught. And there's a lot there to learn. And because all forms of medicine, from the most ancient shamanistics to the most advanced Western medicines, all do the same thing. That is, they have a system of diagnosis. And it's from that system of diagnosis that they come up with a system of treatments. Western diagnosis uses all this high-tech machines to diagnose, and so they're going to use high-tech treatments. Shamans do their dance and press the body and do this and that, and they do a diagnosis. Then they do their treatment, whatever that treatment is, shamanistically. Ayurvedic medicine has their forms of diagnosis, and therefore comes theirs. My point is, the more subtle the diagnosis, such as Oriental medicine, then you get more subtle treatments. You don't get it very invasive. You get herbs, acupuncture, massage. And there's other levels, but I would say that those are the obvious ones.
Could you say anything about your perspective on health? How would you define health and a healthy person? What are the factors that go into your
Yeah.
view of that?
Um,
Probably a
Health.
lot of people come to you who
Right.
have illnesses,
Right.
and so they're looking for health to have the
To get
reversal
back
of
to it.
that condition, whatever it is,
Right.
migraines or sinusitis or allergies. So what, but that's not what you're looking to
Right.
evolve.
So the way I would say it is there's health includes because everything's always changing. Sometimes you get a headache, sometimes you get a pain somewhere. That doesn't mean you're not healthy. Health is when things migrate to more extreme acute problem. And from that, it can migrate because it hasn't been fully resolved into something more deep, which would be chronic problems. And nowadays, and then from there to degenerative. So nowadays, the point is, can we start reversing those degrees back to basic health, where you have a sense of empowerment, well-being, mental stability and clarity, and physical strength and stamina. And but we're always going in and out of things because our body produces toxins. And so that's cellular activity. That's life. And so we have organ systems to discharge or dissolve those toxins. But if those toxins start to accumulate slowly, secretly, then it can build up into future or increased problems. And that's the issue that I see where people, we don't realize things are migrating towards things worse because we've been happily going along in this state of basic health. And we gradually lose it. And one reason we do, some would say it's because of aging. And Oriental medicine would say that aging is the cause of increased chronic problems. But it predicts in the Yellow Emperor's Classic of Chinese Medicine, in chapter 1, it says women are on 7-year cycles throughout their life, and men are on 8-year cycles. And it defines those as certain powers and then certain diminishing of powers. And that the whole reason we decline and are still, every culture is in some way searching for the fountain of youth is because kidney energy governs those cycles of life, says Oriental medicine. And so those fountain of youth are going to be kidney elixirs. And because kidney governs so much of the strength mentally and physically of our life. But it's going to decline, says Oriental medicine, and therefore we die. It's not that death is because of disease. We can die of all natural causes. It's just that the engine of our life, kidney, has resolved itself and let us leave to the next life, next world, next level. So does that answer your
Well, do you have
question?
some comments like Asawa had this 7 stages of health, which is not the absence of disease. It
Right.
was good humor, good sleep, and so forth. Do you have any similar kind of or comments on that, or do you
Yeah.
have your list of what when you somebody comes to you for health
Right.
counseling, you say, well, this is what health should feel like over
Right.
the next whatever period of time when you're improving. What would you say?
Um, I, I, I I agree with Osawa's 7 conditions of health. They're really very easy to understand and meaningful to everybody. I mean, it doesn't matter what culture, it doesn't matter uh, what else is going on in your life. And if you can adapt those, become in tune with those, you are going to be feeling great. And he didn't give much emphasis to emotional life. And I think that was the weakness because us Westerners, particularly, are very, uh, oh, um, give priority to our mind and emotions over our physical issues. We don't care if we sleep so well, but if I'm really distressed, then that's overwhelmingly disturbing. So, how to get to emotional stability is through those other 7 things, is what Osawa and Oriental medicine says. If you go to New York City or California and go and see a classical Chinese person doing Chinese medicine, and you want to talk about your emotions, they're going to say, don't worry, don't worry. Don't, that's all they're going to say. Just be happy. Because they're saying, really, we'll get your organ energy system realigned and you'll be balanced again. You'll be fine again. They see most problems emotionally down to one organ system that's most easily disturbed, and that is liver energy, as being caused because liver moves all the chi, all the energies, and the blood. As long as everything's moving, that's life, that's health. It's when things get stuck, we get tense, we get tight, we grind our teeth, we tense our neck and shoulders. Then we're blocking energy. And that energy is not there for our productive life. So, really, they're saying liver is a key component of disturbance of all emotions. I would not go that far, but liver plays an important role in so many problems.
So give us some tips for either your liver is over agitated or weak.
Right.
What are some of the things that you would recommend?
Yeah.
And I know that as the diagnostic skills that you developed expanded beyond the macrobiotic, your also treatment was not just dietary, but including diet and other things. What would you say for instance, an overactive liver?
Um, let's define some symptoms of what overactive liver means first. All right. It it liver energy moves up the body, right? It starts at your big toe, up the inside of the legs, the abdomen. The meridian ends below on the lower edge of the ribs, but then it has an internal pathway through the throat, over to the eyes, and then to the top of the head. So overactive means it's shooting up here too much. That can be burning eyes, headache behind the eyes, headache in the back or the temples of the head. It's usually head symptoms are very overactive symptoms. Deficient symptoms are because that energy isn't getting to the top. Then person feels faint easily or lightheaded. That's a deficient liver energy. So I recommend those people knock on their head to pull their energy up. But the person with the overactive liver, like the migraine, once that migraine starts, you cannot easily treat it because once it's fully at its extreme, it's going to manifest. So we want to treat things before they become extreme. That's the art of healing. Not that there won't be extremes, but treat them before they get so serious or
What
so
about
disturbing.
dietary recommendations for each of those kinds of conditions?
So we say that extreme liver condition is over yang. It always involves not just energy moving up too much, but a lot of heat. People say they have burning eyes, not just eyes pain. And so we need to increase some more yin foods. And especially, I would say, the vegetable kingdom. More vegetables, lightly cooked, more salads, lemon, some simple fruits. Some of the fruits that are considered good for liver are the berries and pears, for example. Not the other fruits aren't fine, but I'm just saying for liver itself. Um, and soft grains, and not over salted foods. Often we know that salt doesn't stand alone. People who like a lot of salt often want a lot of fat or oils. Salt and oil are very sensorially satisfying and thrilling, but too much fats can stress the liver and make it overwork. And that may be even too many deep frying. I have stopped eating tempura 30 years ago. I just do not eat tempura. I just don't handle too much oil well. So I don't mind not having tempura. I can live a whole lifetime without tempura. It's not, some people say, oh, it's so special and isn't this great? Well, for them, I'm glad, but for me, I know my limits. And I think that's part of the message of self-healing is to know your limits personally and not do something because others are doing it.
What about sour food?
And sour. So I said lemon, but all the sour flavor is the classic flavor for um, liver and
Either
wound.
whether the energy's up or down? Either.
Either way, it's going to help stabilize it. So if somebody has a deficient liver, which is not all that common because it's usually acute. When you get dizzy or lightheaded, that's an acute condition. You're not, it's not a chronic condition. That's moving towards some different disease. And that may be circulatory in a much deeper way. But here it is just I don't want to get too complicated, but liver is the mother energy to liver. In Chinese medicine, liver is wood. So water is the mother energy, and that means kidney is the mother of liver. So someone who gets lightheaded suddenly and things like this, you really want to help tonify liver, kidney in one way or another. And so that's how we can adjust things. In acute ways, it's easy. When we go to more chronic, it gets more challenging. And it's always possible to take a chronic condition back to this range of wellness. But and even degenerative diseases can be improved. And that's so I want to say something that about macrobiotics and degenerative disease. If anything, macrobiotics has got its claim to fame, unfortunately, because of helping some key people with cancer, namely Tony Sotalero and his book Recalled by Life, which inspired thousands and thousands of people to macrobiotics. And meanwhile, I'm just saying that, and now I'm going to say something different and kind of relate them. I've heard the complaint that macrobiotics has not been appreciated. And for all of the greatness that it and the early inspiration for bringing natural foods, organic foods, more vegetable quality foods, miso, tofu, tempeh, macrobiotic movement really introduced those to America in a way that was meaningful and acceptable. And so many people now will say, well, macrobiotics, why isn't it appreciated? Why aren't people running to it? And my response is not the philosophy, is not this and that. It is if you look at all the other diets out there, keto this and vegan that, none of them, not one, says that we can diagnose you and use food as therapy to heal you. Only macrobiotics has made that claim. And I think it's a terrible mistake in itself because it macrobiotics as dietary therapy works, but it really should be in as dietary therapy for within Oriental medicine. Oriental medicine has books on food for healing, but it's very mumble jumbled. It doesn't, it just lists the foods that cool, lists the foods that heat. It's a very simplistic, but I don't think people can see a sensibility that macrobiotics brings to food. And macrobiotics could have become very empowering through Oriental medicine as dietary therapy, but for one thing, and that is Osawa changed the yin and the yang. And so Oriental practitioners say whatever benefit macrobiotics uh, brings to healing, the yin and yang of macrobiotics is not the yin and yang of Oriental medicine. So there must be something wrong with it. And it's really, really unfortunate.
But back to your macrobiotics, you said there was some mistake. There's something happened with Anthony Sadalero and Gene Kohler and other miraculous cancer cures. What were you going to say about that?
Right. Well, is that in a way, two things happened because of that. Number one, it made people who were teaching macrobiotics sincerely, you started centers around the country or in Europe and elsewhere, it made them instant counselors to do healing of the most devastating diseases. And they were absolutely ill-equipped with this simplistic facial diagnosis. That was it. And the only reason it helped many people, thank God for everyone who got help, is that the diet was sensible. It didn't have to be, oh, this vegetable more than that, else you will die. It looked to the people coming like that exact recipe was the uh, uh, key to their healing. But in truth, it was more what they weren't eating, number one, that they stopped eating, that were very toxic and stressful and magnifying their degenerative problems. And it was eating sensible, wholesome, delicious food. The problem was, and still is, that a lot of people come to macrobiotics with more serious problems, and they want to do the dietary approach. Great. But to me, the problem with it now is that it isn't what you eat that's going to make you well. It's what you can digest and transform into your body. It's not so the food's important, but you've got to have the power of digestion and transformation. And in Oriental medicine, that specifically means stomach and pancreas govern digestion and transformation. So to me, all healing begins with stomach and pancreas, what's called the earth element. And that is where everybody's healing has to begin. And we can do that with food, but it takes time. And so I'm saying many people who come with serious disease, I predict, have what I would call maldigestion, I'm not defining it, but just maldigestion. And, the rumblings, the stomach ache, the heartburn, the bloating, all these things, irregular bowels, all this stuff. And and we need to get that whole system working well. And that could be called make the microbiome strong and secure. It's kind of the same thing.
Are there some things you would recommend?
Well, I think some key things are always going to be starts with what not to have, and it really involves not having sugary things. That is the most disturbing because they create acidity in the digestive tract. And acidity is anti-healing. Our body, the output of our cellular activities is acid output. And that's why we have kidney bladder functions to discharge acids and lungs to discharge acids and liver to help detoxify, skin to help discharge. So um, I'm saying sugar is very disturbing to self-healing and improving digestion. And um, so miso soup is really an essential ingredient. It's alkalinizing. It's providing beneficial flora or bacteria to the small intestines. And so we need to gradually alkalinize. You cannot suddenly alkalinize without creating a ricochet crisis.
Boomerang.
So it's a process. And we're always needing to alkalinize. That's why we put salt, a major alkaline ingredient, in our food. All grains must be cooked with salt. If you're not cooking with salt in grains, you are automatically, except for one grain, automatically creating acidity because all grains are acidic except millet. And so, and maybe quinoa. So, um, salt is essential in health and healing. But you can't overdo that or you're going to crave what? The sugars that are undermining the healing. So it's a fine balance.
Ganat, do you have some comments or questions from our forum participants?
Oh, yes. Thank you, Michael. This is excellent. You have a lot to say, and I'm enjoying it very much. I have to scroll back for questions. One of them, you spoke way back about at the time when you were just starting out with macrobiotics, many people were attracted and they really wanted to learn this information, and it was very strong, interesting for them. Can we say what was then and what's now? Do we not have that thirst for this information now? Or it, I
I
know.
understand.
Sheldon used to call these plunters. I would ask these kind of questions. He'd say, enough with plunters. He said, just forget it. Anyway,
Sheldon went for what?
yeah,
I didn't hear.
plunters. There's a Yiddish word, plunter. A plunter is like these kind of mishigas questions. Never
Oh,
mind, never
honestly.
mind.
Um,
Yeah.
I think what was happening back then was um, that generation that Lenny and I are part of, and you and Sheldon and thousands of others, and not just generational, but we're at that phase in our life that we hadn't settled in. We weren't married. We didn't have an absolute career, and we were on this quest for something new. I'm thinking of this movie where they're building this mound, and these different people are knowing that it's something, but they don't know what it is. It's it's a it's a famous. I'm sorry, I can't remember the name
That's
of the.
okay. What's the point?
My point is,
Close encounters of the third kind.
yeah. My point is that we there was this quest, and the newer generations don't have that same level of quest. They're coming from
Ah.
their life from a different place, and so I don't want to segue to them, though I have different thoughts on that. Um, but but I think it was a unique time, a very unique time that merged with Oriental things from India and the Orient coming to the West. And meanwhile, the Orient wanted the West. They wanted Coca-Cola. They
Mhm.
want dairy foods. They never had dairy foods. And so they wanted from us and we wanted from them. And so I think it was a very unique time. And how do we communicate now the
Hmm.
importance and value and to inspire new people, younger people? That's a different challenge than it was back then.
Don't you think also that there was a more open-minded mindset that we were coming at so many differences of social unrest, like Vietnam War, civil rights, and so forth. And we were looking for answers with an open curiosity. And it feels like nowadays people have set their minds to a particular orientation and they see conflict as immovable, unavoidable, and my way is right and your way is wrong. And each side is saying that without saying, what can we discover that will synthesize, that will harmonize, that will bring us to a common ground? Instead, young people, I mean, there's some experimentation with music, there's some experimentation with technology, but it's sort of like, okay, AI is going to have the answers for us. We
Hmm.
don't have that same curiosity. We've already made up our mind.
And even before AI, they could still go on Google and ask any question they want and get their quick answer.
But it
And
was
we're satisfied.
reinforcing their point of view rather than giving them an answer to an open curiosity. It
Right.
feels like we have, over the last 50 years, polarized throughout the world. And maybe it's just the cycle of yin and yang, looking at it in that way, but in fact, it will turn around again, as it did from World War II to the period of the 60s.
Right. I believe that. I believe that history also makes change. It has its yin and yangs. And um, it looks like the world is going towards a big extreme these days. Um, and that's a very dangerous potential, but and meanwhile, it may bring some enlightened new discoveries of humanity's understanding of life. Because that's what's missing with all this technology is what is our life about? What is the purpose? What is the um, need for growth? And isn't there a need to grow and develop ourselves, become more spiritually oriented, which does not mean religious, but just means uh, recognizing the invisible life as part of our innate life as well.
And one thing that comes back, if I can take the direction a little bit differently, Ganat, is that one of the things that you talked about in terms of health and basic health about degenerative and chronic and acute conditions, there is the ability of the body to heal itself. So there's the immune system. And you
Right.
didn't really speak about the immune system, but there's the physical immune system, and there's also all this talk about vaccines and whether we need an external stimulus or is a natural vaccine to be exposed to things like this. And it could be social unrest. Maybe we become more resilient as we are exposed to this kind of chaotic lifestyle and antagonism that's presented by the news. But just speaking about the immune system and
Sure.
immunity, what would you say and what would you do to strengthen our innate ability to withstand
Yes.
external kind of stimuli?
Yes, I agree totally. And the immune system is the secret power we have to rebalance ourselves. And it's not that viruses are out to kill us. The viruses have always been here on the planet, and bacteria. It's more that our system can self-adjust to threats. And our immune system could be looked at in different ways. I think one way is the strength of the blood system and blood balance. Another way is with kidney energy again. Kidney is the source of all power in the body. So if kidney gets weakened or compromised, then our immune system is more vulnerable. And so whatever weakens blood, whatever weakens kidneys is it predictably going to make us easily more insecure and more frightened. The more frightened people are in life, I'm saying their immune system is weak, or they wouldn't be so spontaneously frightened with the latest virus going around. And yes, there's when there's a new virus like COVID, it was a very dangerous time because people's once that starts going around in mass, a new form of a virus that can only enter us through the respiratory system. And then because a lot of people have weak lungs, and why do they have weak lungs? Because they aren't exercising, they aren't using their lungs much. Their lungs are easily very congested with phlegm because of too much sugary food on the one hand and dairy food on the other. So there's this chronic lung disturbance and makes them very vulnerable. But regardless, when a new virus comes around, the body isn't expecting it. That doesn't have any instant response because it doesn't know it yet. And that's called immunity when you know what's coming. So it's how to make that a trust in our immune system. And the way that weakens it is, once again, too much sugary foods, too much alcohol. Ice cream is really one of the worst foods around. It's got too much cold, too much sweet, and too much phlegm producing fats. And uh, in Oriental medicine, they say stomach and pancreas are yin yang pairs. And what they want is warmth. They uh, respond very badly to cold. Ice cold water is not good for stomach and pancreas. It may satisfy your desire for something to cool you down, but it's not helping the stomach at all. So I'm saying people have undermined their digestive system and therefore their blood system by creating, because food is created through digestion, and no, blood is created through digestion, that we we have weakened, compromised our digestive system power to make strong blood, which has weakened our innate immune system. And so the challenge is, can we reverse that? Can we create a stronger immune system? But a lot depends on your condition when that COVID came. You know, right then you can't say, well, I'm going to start alkalinizing and I'm going to cut out this, and just suddenly my defenses are up and it can't hurt me. That's probably very unlikely, very unlikely. But people who've been doing healthy macrobiotic style eating are much more immune than the everyday eater who's having their Coca-Colas, their cheeseburgers, and their ice cream cones and French fries, you know. So there's a huge difference.
Tempura potatoes are okay, but not French fries. No, no, I don't want tempura either. And
Michael,
one of the things I just to interrupt for a second, Gennady, is that I know Michael's going into great detail in some of these areas, and and we don't have time to go into as much detail as we would like, but Michael will be, and we'll announce this at the end of the presentation today. He is going to be doing some online teaching separate from this forum that we'll give you more information about later, but that's a way that you can study with him and learn more of the specifics, both about the diagnostic skills, the techniques, as well as some of the healing methods that he'll recommend or that he has discovered in working with these thousands of clients. So there will be kind of this is sort of the intro to a more in-depth series of classes that Michael's planning on developing later this spring. And but if you had something else, Gannat, that you wanted to ask?
first of all, sign me up. I mean, it just sounds excellent. I'm really looking forward to that. We have many, many questions about specific conditions of health, and I am disregarding all of them because that will follow. Yeah, because in the class you're going to teach, I'm sure we can have more intimate interaction and ask our questions and stuff. If I'm right, I don't think this is the forum for talking about my great aunt's osteoarthritis and what to do about whatever, whatever. Okay, so uh, we have two people with hands raised, and I would ask each of you, Gordon and Marion, if your question is about some condition of health, let's table that. Let's
Put
not,
it
oh,
in
we've
the
got even
chat.
more.
Put it in the chat, and we'll try to respond to some of those before the end of the session. But one thing
Yeah.
that we did want to talk about is that this still being the winter in the northern hemisphere, a lot of people are experiencing different kind of aches and pains and cold or flu symptoms. And Michael and I have talked about this, but maybe he could share something about how to recognize whether you have a so-called cold, a bacterial infection, or a flu, which is more of a viral infection, how you would know the difference, and what are some of the things that you might do to alleviate the symptoms of either one of those. Is that something okay for you, Ganat?
Excellent.
Okay.
Well, first I want to correct you, Lenny. A cold is a viral infection. It's not bacterial.
Ah,
So it's just that that virus has been around for millennium, for generations. And so almost everybody's body is used to responding to it. But you get a cold because you've your immediate condition is depleted in some regard. It makes you more vulnerable. Maybe you've uh, overworked or physically stressed out doing heavy lifting and things, and you're just exhausted. Your body can temporarily become more vulnerable. And it seems that viruses love to be more active in the cold weather. And the difference between a virus and a bacteria is significant. That is, as we know, um, antibiotics kill bacteria, and that has saved millions of lives. But bacterial infection can be sudden and very rapid. Bacteria grow very fast. Virus do not grow very fast. And virus, once in the body, will always be in the body. And I can prove that. Take chickenpox that I had as a child, and maybe many of you had as a child. And then it was gone. You know, it was dealt with, your body dealt with it. And now 50 years later, you can get reactivation of that virus that was always dormant in your body. And now it's called shingles. And I did get shingles about 15 years ago. But I quickly, did my Chinese medicine stuff. And within less than a week, or about a week, I resolved it. But shingles is very painful, very, very painful. Inflammation of the nerves. It's almost always above the rib cage.
Same virus that caused chickenpox.
Same virus that was sitting dormant in your body until your kidney energy couldn't support immunity as well. Your blood gets off. You work too hard. You're stressed from everyday living, and these confluences of factors can ignite it, can reactivate it. And so virus, once in the body, is going to always be there, is my point. Bacteria can be gone, totally gone. And our body is very used to a cold, and it's undoubtedly becoming more accustomed to the flu because that's been around, except scientifically, they say the flu each year is genetically slightly different. That's why they want to make a different flu vaccine. And that flu vaccine is a hit and miss, 50% prediction that they're going to get the right genetic new version. So a lot of flu vaccines are just a waste. But anyone who's got a weakened immune system, no harm in doing that vaccine, in my opinion. I know there are people who are so anti-Western medicine that a vaccine is the worst thing in the world. It's going to manipulate your body. It's going to ruin your health. I disagree. I think there is a place. We're talking about individual judgment. It's not a movement. Macrobiotics should not be out there saying no vaccines, no matter what. That's shameful talk. It should be empowering people to make that hard decision for their personal life, because a vaccine is not about anything other than yourself in the end.
So if I have flu symptoms, which is more of a fever and
Right.
aches and pains, what would you recommend?
So with all of these, it still depends on the degree of your symptoms and where it's manifesting. Is it manifesting more in the lungs, which is most likely, or is it manifesting deeper in with disturbed digestion? Some viruses can make diarrhea and very bloatedness. It depends where it gets to, and when it goes from the lungs, it goes into the bloodstream. And so long COVID is an example of COVID having not just been in the lungs, but now gone elsewhere and into the blood. It can go to the brain, it can go to organs, and it can be very, very deadly.
So how do I relieve some of the symptoms and prevent that from
So
moving on?
we treat this. So first, I'm going to say something that I have no basis. I can't validate exactly. I am saying bacteria and viruses are opposite. Bacteria is yin, grows rapidly, and comes and goes. Virus is goes more deep and stays put. And there is no truly antiviral medicine. These antivirals that they have for HPV, for shingles even, I say those are very
experimental?
Yeah, I'm just not, that's a separate discussion. I don't think they're really full treatments. I am saying bacteria is yin for macrobiotics and virus is yang. And yang means it holds on and it's not going to let go once it's inside us. And so we would need to treat a virus, whether it's the cold, the flu, or COVID, as a yang extreme experience. And that means we need to have very light cooking. I recommend one pot meal. First, your appetite is going to go way down, and you're going to, once there's a fever, there's going to be sweating. And that's the body's healthy response to this fever that the body has created to try and expel the virus. I mean, our body is always serving us, it's not working against us. And so sometimes you want to allow that fever to help resolve, I mean, the sweating to help resolve the fever. You want those things to work in unison. But that's at its momentary peak. Then we need to help regain stability. And I'm saying because digestion has been thrown off, there's a lot of fatigue, aches and pains, maybe headaches. Then we need simple, what I call a one pot meal. And that one pot meal is like a stew. Some grain, vegetable, protein, some herbs, culinary herbs, some lemon, some ginger, maybe, depending. If you're more cold, you put ginger in. If you're more hot, you put lemon in. But either way, it's simple for the body and it's cooked well so that it's easy to digest. It's more like a porridge and it's soothing to the digestive system. Remember, stomach, pancreas want warmth. Now, stomach itself wants warmth, moistness, like oatmeal, but pancreas wants a warmth, dryness. So there's always this little conflict. But And so maybe having some cracker with that would be for the pancreas. But in any case, it can be simple. You don't need tremendous recipes at that point, but it should be enough to stimulate digestion again, appetite, and re-nourishing the body.
Well, speaking of liquid, like this is a controversial topic in macrobiotics teachings in the past. It was to minimize the amount of liquid that you consume, even though cooked rice obviously is 50% water, but not drinking was one of the keystones of Micho and George Osawa's teachings. What would you say?
I would say there's, I go down the middle on that. Yes, I've still been one not to drink enough liquid during the day. I still have to remind myself. Um, and a tea counts as liquid. Needless to say, it doesn't have to be water. Some people, even in the health food world, recommend tremendous amount of water. And that is just very over diluting the blood and overworking the kidneys, in my opinion.
But in terms of
But
fever, well, I was just thinking about during this viral thing, do we starve the fever or feed whatever? They say that about drinking.
yeah, I forgot that adage. Um, anyone there remember it? It's really, I think it's more intuitive. But we need to eat some every day. And when you're really ill with an acute problem, then we've got to ingest some food. And I'm saying that could be the miso soup, that could be the simple stew, uh, that's going to provide both nourishment and warmth and recenter ourselves. Um, but liquid intake during the day, as a general health rule, I have people coming into me saying they're told to have 10, 12 cups of water every day, each day, and of water outside of tea or any other liquids, fruit juice or other things. There can be too muchness, and that can affect digestion because this is, pancreatic enzymes, stomach acids are all there to do their work. So they become diluted and then get weakening digestion. So it's a fine line.
One other thing, if we could just go to one more area about health. I mean, I hope that the flu, cold treatments have been expressed some help for you, but maybe a month ago, we talked with Jane Stankich about sleep and sleep disorders, and I don't know if you wanted to go into just a little bit more detail about the two areas of sleep that people seem to be troubled by. One is inability to fall asleep, and two is the symptom of waking up and not being able to get back to sleep in the middle of the night, and just your mind is going and going and
Right.
can't sleep enough, and then wake up or don't wake up relaxed and rested.
Yes.
So what are some of the recommendations you would have?
Okay, I thought, well, before I answer that, I just want to say one more thing back to flu and colds and
Okay.
things. There's some very famous Chinese herbal formulas. You can buy them on the internet that are famous for that first signs of a cold when you feel aches and pains and a little sore throat and chills, that you would take that. It's called yin chow. And then there's a couple of other formulas if it's gone deeper to help support the body's dealing with this rapid disturbance that the body's obviously getting overwhelmed with. And and I recommend them. They're all safe. Just get it from a reputable company. And uh, I think everyone should have yin chow in their home because though we may not get a cold often, but when you do, there it is. And you can just take it, and often it just cuts it off right there. So supporting your body's systems. Anyway, to sleep. I want to say I thought Jane's talk was excellent, and people should listen to that. So I'm not going to duplicate anything she said. I would just add, and this is a kind of a quick list, but let's take falling asleep. Some simple things are cotton sheets and cotton pajamas, no synthetic, no wind blowing on your head is very disturbing to falling asleep. And therefore, though you can take a shower or a bath before going to bed, don't wash your hair before going to bed because that makes your head much, much more vulnerable to energies around the body. Now, going to sleep itself, I say is easy because it's really self hypnotism. And what we're doing is you go through this ritual every night. For how many thousands of nights have we gone to bed? You wash your face, you brush your teeth, you put on your pajamas. You're going through this ritual of going to bed. And the trick is, Jane already said, no television, no computer. I agree with that totally. That's stimulating the brain. Because let's not forget, what is the meaning of falling asleep energetically? It is moving energy from our head and brain down into our bodies, all the way down to the toes. So you may go to sleep with cold feet, but you're going to wake up with warm feet, even hot feet, because that energy wants to go down. And that means we're changing our hyperactive mind into restfulness. And the problem is that the neck and shoulders are chronically tight on so many people. You need to massage your shoulders and neck or do some stretching, release tension in the tendons and ligaments. That kind of exercise before sleep is really going to help the energy move where it wants to go, which is downward. Ultimately, though sleep is benefiting everywhere, it is most importantly to recharge the kidneys because kidney is this gate of life. And that's when you can feel renewed in the morning because it has been recharged. Meanwhile, so I'm saying it's a self-hypnotism. You don't just get in bed and lie down. You get in a certain position. I like to be on my right side first, maybe someone else on their left side. But any position is fine, but you repeat that every night, that same position, because it brings you into this state of letting go. And um, so if your mind is too active, just write a list of everything you want to do tomorrow and not have to hold it in your mind. And then that should help you let go of that.
Any beverage you would recommend?
Pardon?
Any beverage before
Some,
going to
some,
sleep?
some warm tea, warm water or tea. No food, zero food. There's sleepy time teas. There's different teas with different herbs in it. Fennel, chamomile, all of those are fine. You know, any simple herbal tea that you like, you can make that part of the habit of going to sleep, that preparation for sleep. And so once you're asleep, that can be, you know, that even Western science says those first hours are the most deep sleep. Now, some people it's not, but regardless, we usually wake up because we need to go to the bathroom. And there, the challenge is what I would call sleepwalking. Pretend you're sleepwalking. Don't turn on any bright lights, just little light as needed. And just kind of sleepwalk to the bathroom and sleepwalk back to bed. No looking at your uh, phones and anything like that. And then try and get back to sleep. And that's the harder one, in my opinion. For me too, sometimes it's hard because I'm start thinking again. And what I personally do is pay attention to my breathing. Breathing is your key to uh, altering your energy. And where you breathe to is everything. Just for create deep abdominal breathing, even when you're in bed. Just take a nice breath, not chest, but to the belly. Let the belly expand, hold it, and let go. And then do that a few times. That's going to start settling you back in to your body again, away from your mind. And um, many people are so disturbed with sleep, they are eating at 3 or 4 in the morning. And that means something's way out of balance, deeply out of balance. You should not be hungry during the night, even though you didn't eat 3 or 4 hours before going to bed. We shouldn't be hungry during sleep.
And what about the time between your last meal of the day and going to sleep? Some
This
people are
should,
skipping dinner or
mm,
whatever. They
yeah,
want to make sure that they're empty. Do you have any, or
I,
intermittent fasting or anything like that?
right. I would say a minimum of 3 to 4 hours of no eating before going to bed, a minimum. And it depends on your physiology. You know, some people have a different metabolism. Everyone has a slightly different metabolism. Some people are more heart oriented or more liver oriented or more stomach oriented. And without bringing up, I'm going to bring up emotions in a way I don't mean to over dive into this because it's a super big subject.
And we can get into it in your ongoing class.
Right, right. I'm going to
Okay.
get
All
into
right. So
that
just a little
much,
surface. Yeah,
a
go ahead.
little surface here. Um, what disturbs our, the emotions that are more disturbing are, that are very chronic and very easy to ignite are worry, anxiety, and I mean, some people, you know, are just so anxious all the time. They can't fall asleep. They're nervous all the time. They're afraid easily. So what's that about? And the opposite emotion is anger. In other words, I'm saying worry and anxiety are yin emotions. And anger is obviously a yang emotion. And so how to deal with those is paramount in our life. we all have emotions. That is part of our human experience. And it's how do we stabilize ourselves from those emotions or rise above them. And simply put, I would say worry is more a pancreas energy emotion, middle of the stomach area. Anxiety is more heart. In other words, the disturbance has risen higher. Anxiety is worry magnified. And a panic attack is even more magnified. You know, I'm afraid to get on planes. I panic and da, 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 da. So there's those levels, but they're really all the same degree of imbalance, which is the yin imbalance. And I'm saying wherever you make your center is where you breathe to. If you're easily anxious and therefore breathing to the heart and chest, you're going like this, all of this. And we've got to get that breath down. And you can calm yourself. So that's one simple method. Yes, there are acupressure points galore and plenty of other things, and reducing the yin food, because when people get anxious, they feel it as tension, but it's false yang. It's not real yang. It's not empowered yang. And so they want yin to relax. They want sweet drinks. They want their fruit juice and their smoothies. And it may relax them, but it's not solving the problem. It's actually refeeding the problem. So that's one point. And I'm just simply say anger is the opposite of it. And anger is very difficult to release because it's a power. It wants release. It demands release. You want to punch. You want to attack. And all I can offer there is because it's not exactly dietary. Though, yes, we could say don't eat much animal food, soften the foods. That's all true. But it doesn't take much in modern life to trigger anger because we still hold a lot of a history of anger in our system, in our life. I offer Gandhi's answer to anger. People were being beaten, and Gandhi said, do not retaliate. So he recommended a physical technique. I don't know anyone who knows it. I'm glad to share it. I don't remember where I read it from Gandhi's writings, but when you get angry, you automatically clench your fist. It's instinctual and automatic. You want to pound the table, you want to punch, you want to do something with that fist. He told people, open your fist, open your palms. You cannot be angry with your palms opened. And it's true. I would add, breathe in deeply and exhale your tensions out from your palm to the ground. Just put that energy to the earth. The earth will accept it. Or put it to a tree. Trees will accept it. Anyway, you have to release that energy one way or another, and not in violence, but in release to the earth. And still, we need to ponder what triggers my anger, what triggers my anxiety. And I'll tell you one thing that triggers each of those. Anger is always about the past on some broad scheme of things. And anxiety and worry, chronic worrying, is always about the future. You can only worry, you can't be angry about the future. Maybe we can with Trumpism going on, but I won't go there because it hasn't happened yet, all those possible terrible things. So our anger is more about in the present or past. So that's our challenge, is to reflect on how we see the future, have a more positive vision, and hold to that, and be at peace with that through the waves of change that we all go through. And with our anger is really working on resolving our past triggers of resentments, things that are unresolved within us that are still gnawing at us, and how to look deeply at those and find clarity and peace. And that is acceptance of who we are and who we've been.
So one thing that I've noted in your recommendations, you're not focused just on dietary changes as a way of establishing balance, harmony, health in our everyday life. And so it's refreshing to hear something that's not just, well, all you have to do is have an umeboshi plum and you're going to get cured. However, speaking of umeboshi plums, they have a suggestion about umeboshi plums. Why don't you share your discovery about?
Everyone knows umeboshi who's listening, I'm sure, and it's a great magical food. It really is. It's an immature fruit, akin to our apricot, and it is pickled with salt and chiso leaves, which is Perelia leaf in Western terms. And why is it pickled with the chiso leaves? Is because those leaves lend a coloration to the umeboshi, but it's also very high in calcium. So it's adding a second mineral, not just sodium, but also calcium to the umeboshi. And I consider umeboshi one of the 4 great foods gifts from the Orient. And so it's very good at reducing acidity. It's very alkaline, but not just pure salt alkaline, because it still is a fruit. There is some sour because it's immature fruit, and there's still some subtle sweet because it is a fruit. And so it's a unique combination of flavor energies, but overall it is reducing acidity, very good for heartburn, acid reflux, things that are obviously symptoms of over acidity. In any case, you can take that to a different level, and that different level is save your pits. And sometimes, umeboshi paste is great, but get some pits and use the meat of it, which is the paste, but save your pits. And as a medicine, that pit is still a power source. You use a nutcracker to crack open the shell of the pit, and inside is the seed. That seed is medium taste, no big taste. It's a little chewy, but nothing hard to eat. And eat it raw. And that will be a power strengthener for the hara, for the deepest part of our power center. And so I use that when somebody is after surgery, for example. Surgery has weakened the hara. I don't care where that surgery was done. Your system has been invaded. And so this helps regain your anchor, your core power center that is going to help you revitalize.
So how many of these would you recommend? So people find the umeboshi pit, the kernel, which is inside that seed. So
no, it's outside the seed. The kernel, the pit is, you take off the paste, and then there's the pit.
There's a stone there.
Right, you crack it open.
Okay.
Then inside is the seed, and you eat that. I would say, because they're special and you're not going to buy hundreds of these, I would say have one every day after surgery.
Oh yeah, one. Just one. That's
just
all.
One. Spread it out, and then go to one every 2 or 3 days. It's a great power. It doesn't need to be eaten in huge quantity. That's the thing about elixirs. You don't need a lot to have a big effect.
Great secret cure that only a few people will discover who know about umeboshi plums.
Right.
So, Ganat, are there some burning questions, or Michael was going to conclude his talk today talking about his view of the future of macrobiotics. But is there anything else that you wanted to interject?
That's hard to pass up. The burning question that we have here, and when you do get around to taking questions, Marion is back with us, but we'll wait if that's okay. The burning question here is about emotional healing. Are emotions stronger than our digestive system? Can they overcome terminal illness or whatever it is? What's the strength of faith? Let's call it that.
The strength of what?
I don't understand the question exactly.
Right, I know. What is the strength of belief or faith? If a person really can somehow get behind, it doesn't matter, and the food is supportive, of course, but what's the
Right.
role of emotion?
Well, is faith an emotion? I say it's not. Faith is beyond belief. It is the closest
Faith
to
is
divine,
belief.
being in tune with God. I have faith it's all going to work out. How do I know it's going to? How's my body going to? How am I going to tell my body what to do? It knows what to do. I have faith that my choices are going to support my wellness and my healing. This word faith is a power word. And some use the word hope. I hope it's going to work. And I accept that, though I'm a little critical of the word. But if that's your word, to me, it really means faith. Faith. And I want everyone to have great faith in all of their choices, even in Western medicine.
Mm.
All right. I think Western medicine has a place in degenerative diseases like cancer. And those are big choices that people have to make. Recently, I've been counseling a woman with colon cancer, and I, I, I urged her, as anyone with cancer who comes to me before they've had all of Western medicine's treatments, that which are unusual because most people have already done them by the time they come to me. But and I can still work within that scope, but I'm saying with her, I really wanted her to know that I support surgery. If a cancer is surgically treatable, Western medicine knows statistically it's the best treatment possible, that chemotherapy and radiation have much less benefit long-term. And so I support surgery then, but still may not work. It may not be enough. In any case, then there's decisions to be made. And with this woman, the doctors wanted to do chemotherapy and radiation. She wanted my opinion. And I said, it doesn't matter what I think. It matters your choice. This is your life. And these are big time choices with huge consequences. And so I want you to make those decisions. And I refused. And I wanted her to talk with her doctors, talk with her husband, who was in favor of the Western treatments. And then the doctors said one thing, which was with her cancer, they said chemotherapy is going to, which they strongly recommended, is going to be a 50% benefit. 50% it's going to turn this around, stop this cancer, because they knew it had spread. I should make that clear. After the surgery, they knew it had spread. So I said 50-50. My gosh, it's not a hard choice because she's dedicated to macrobiotics, anything healing she's willing to do. Absolutely. And I wanted her to make that core decision. And finally she did. Her husband was on board with it. The doctors are on board with it. And they're saying, well, we'll do a blood test every 6 weeks. And we'll do a scan every couple of
Well,
months.
she's on board with what? With the chemo?
No, with not doing the chemo.
With not.
Doing macrobiotics, some Chinese herbs, some supplements, and getting her daily walk in every day, going out for walks and things like that. And I'm working with her now. So the outcome isn't fully clear, but I've seen so many people go through chemotherapy and radiation, and I support everybody what they're doing. But we're no longer doing macrobiotic healing a la Tony Sotolero's story. Even Sodolero, he had surgery. He never did chemo. I think he did radiation. But chemo is very destructive to the intestinal lining, to the immune system, to the blood system. Blood counts go way down. I mean, I'm not against it. But what I'm saying is when I see someone who's doing all those things and then they come for macrobiotics, it is that I'm really treating the side effects of the chemo as much as any support for their self. It's kind of equal because chemo overwhelms the system. It's overwhelmed.
It seems that macrobiotics is not a narrow view, but it's a broad view. It's the macro view. It's not the micro view. And so it seems that what you're recommending is that anything and everything is possible if used with discretion, with personal insight, with your own decision-making process intact. But it's not like this is okay and that's not based on a large view. It all fits together as a whole.
It does. And these are big life decisions. And the nice thing is someone could start chemotherapy and they have a violent reaction. They say, hell no, I don't want this. And they can stop it. You're not signing a contract with Western medicine that you must do all of that. So, and you're not signing a contract with macrobiotics or any other healing modality. You're choosing it on your own. And it's that is the empowerment. That's where faith comes in. And I will not disturb anybody's faith in whatever they're choosing, including Western medicine.
Does that answer the question, Gannat?
It does indeed. Yeah. Thank
Okay.
you very much.
In terms of the future, one thing we wanted to mention is that this weekend was the beginning of Chinese New Year's, and it's a lunar holiday. We had the new moon, and it's the beginning of it. This is the year of the snake. Can you give us any prognostication in terms of the future of our life this year, this snake year, and then how that unfolds to how macrobiotics potentially could evolve?
Well, that's hard to connect all those dots.
Yeah.
But and I don't have much to say about the snake year. Snake year is a very positive energy for almost everybody because snakes are about transformation and change because they shed their skin. And they're also slither along in the world. They're not out there with grandiose egos and, I'm the greatest and this is not a snake person to do that. And so it's a year of tremendous growth. And it's not just a snake year, it's a wood snake year because there's the 5 transformations going on, and it's a yang wood snake year. So it's got to say wood, and those who know the 5 transformations, wood is about liver gallbladder, and that's about growth, movement. Like I've said, liver surges the blood and the qi. And so we're all going to experience new inner growth and outer success if we direct that growth positively. That's what it can mean for everybody. Individually, what animal you are, it has different nuances, but it's a very positive year and very timely that offers every one of us and macrobiotics a chance to reevaluate through reflection and reassessment. What are the core values and how can we communicate those meaningfully and inspiringly to the world? And that's what my quest is. I don't have a quick answer to that. It's still my quest, how to make the inherent positiveness of macrobiotics. It has its downsides, like I've said, promising to diagnose and heal that no other diet does. But we can still make it meaningful in everyday people's lives, and that it needs some context. And to me, that context is, and what inspired me was not the food per se. It was fascinating, and I was seeking a new way of eating, but it was the philosophy. And that philosophy, I think, is still meaningful today. Whether we call that yin yang or the unique principles, they're simple and they're useful. And I think that can be translated or communicated in a more uh, modern way and a more inspiring way to people. There's nothing negative in it. Macrobiotics has kind of approached there's been an undercurrent of negativity in macrobiotic teachings or manipulation of people, and frightening people. If you don't eat this way, this and this and this is going to happen. I mean, I've never taught that way. I just will not do that. That is um, using fear as a motivation, and I think it's one of the weakest and most dangerous motivations. So it's how to make it inspiring. I was inspired. Lenny was inspired. Ganat was inspired. Many were. And it's how to, what inspired me is not identical to what inspired anyone else within that context. But so I'm speaking of what inspired me, but it was also challenging to get to make decisions yourself and take some risk against the norms of those days and stick with it. That's why when Micho said to me, do it for 1 year, it was a big challenge. And and I came out of that year feeling really clear-headed and much more centered and inspired. So, um, but that first year had its, everyone went through things, and it was so extreme. Just to remind people, the 1960s and early 70s, macrobiotic practice was ultra extreme. I'm not promoting anyone doing that. We're talking literally 50% grains and almost always brown rice, always pressure cooked, always too salty. Some overcooked vegetables, some beans, uh, fish was once a week, and fruit minimal. Now you try and do that for a week, and you're gonna start to go a little batty.
I remember I had my first apple after about a year. It was an experiment whether or not I could handle it. Here I'd been taking LSD like once a month, and I was afraid to eat an apple.
Lenny and I, when we were in the same study house, we decided to do um, a 7-day grain fast, just eating grains. And it was great. I love that. But it's very dangerous because you start missing other foods, you get too tight, you get too this and that, and then you kind of coast. You kind of it's a very smooth ride. And I just love that mentally, emotionally, and physically. But you can't do that because nutritionally, you're not going to survive on just eating brown rice every day. And I think we included millet and maybe some other grain in that too. But it was a fun experiment. And but you have to be basically healthy, which brings me to something else I want to say. We started in our 20s, and others are starting in their 30s or 40s or 50s with macrobiotics. It means you've already accumulated very extreme other qualities that didn't just go in one way and out the others ways. Uh, all that dairy food fats have been stuck in the body. They can be there for decades. And whatever, other toxins that we took in, and not just by our Western eating, but by environmental change. The toxicities in the air, in the soil, in the water have only increased, not decreased in our lives. That's why organic foods are very valuable. But those have impacted our bodies, and we are part of that first generation to be impacted after World War II, is when those became very prevalent in American agriculture. And so all I'm saying is Meanwhile, we were young enough that our bodies could resist and move forward. But remember, aging is a factor, and that means less ability to strongly detox, less ability to rebound, whether that's emotionally, physically. And so we need to have a broad basis to succeed. Eating too narrowly can be weakening or disturbing. And long time, I'll say this, and I know this is going to raise another topic that we won't get into. A lot of long time, 30, 40-year or more people doing macrobiotics, especially women, become, from a Chinese point of view, very deficient, but they feel that deficiency as tightness. And so they're saying, I'm over young and I need more yin. And to yin in macrobiotics means more sweets. When did chocolate get condoned in macrobiotics? Well, that was 15, 20 years ago. It never was condoned in the past. Suddenly, and who liked all that chocolate? The women especially. I'm not saying chocolate is forbidden or bad. I'm just saying it was curious to me that that came in because people were getting too tight. But in Oriental medicine, that kind of tightness is actually a deficiency of good quality yin. And yin means fats or oils. And so that's another big topic that I'll teach about in my programs, but I'm not going to take it further than to say that macrobiotic practice, even itself, needs to get some realignment going on, some realignment. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it needs realigning. And uh, so that's what I'd like to share about in any future teachings.
Ganat, are there some final, we have a few minutes left and by the way, Michael Rossoff has a website and a domain that uses his name, michaelrossoff.com. And so that's the easiest way to find out what he's doing, to stay in touch, to get on the email list, and to be informed about this upcoming series of classes that he'll be doing, going into much more depth than he was able to do today. So michaelrossoff.com. And if you've gotten the email from Ganat, you know how to spell Michael's first and last name. But
Double
anyway,
S, double F.
All right.
Yeah.
double S, double
Yeah.
F.
Yeah, sign up for my newsletter. Just scroll down to the bottom of the homepage and you can sign up for my newsletter and then you'll automatically get, I haven't sent out a newsletter in almost 2 years. So even if you've signed up in the past and don't know if, or wondering if you're on it, just sign up again. You'll still just get one newsletter.
Good.
So anything
So
else?
that's all I've got. We've got a list of people who may want to speak about personal conditions, even though I've warned against it. So you have to think how you want to take questions or cut them off when they talk about their grandmother's big toe.
Well, we only have like 5 or 6 minutes for this. Is there anything, there's nothing in the chats that you wanted to
No, there's a lot of questions, and I'm
Yeah,
executive
personal
decisioning.
questions are not appropriate right now.
no
Yeah,
personal questions,
obviously.
just general.
Ginat, I want to ask a question, not personal, not health. Am I allowed?
Arwan, Kota, I'm cutting you off because we have 3 people with hands raised. Would you mind? Just Marion has been waiting for almost an
No.
hour to ask her question.
Okay.
Okay, maybe if you want to write it, I could sneak it in. Okay, but let's
No,
go to
no, no.
Marion. You
Next
have a
time.
question?
That's all right.
Okay, Aaron, sorry.
You were talking,
Marion.
you were talking about the emotions and the liver, and you were saying that the kidney is the mother of the liver. And I'm wondering, and you said you need to tonify the liver. So the question is, what do you recommend for tonifying the liver? I mean, tonifying the kidneys, I mean.
Kidneys are the source of yin and yang energies of the body. So it's a very dynamic answer. It's not, you know, if you look at the 5 transformations, you'll see the flavor of water element the kidney belongs to is salt, which could be more broadly said as minerals. And that is true. But you can't just start eating a lot of salt to tonify kidneys. That is not going to work. So it needs to be gradual. And anything that's going to tonify has to be gradual, or there will be a ricochet effect. I would say eating some animal food will also be tonifying to kidneys. Not excessive, but some animal food. And the least extreme of animal foods is seafoods, fish and other seafoods. And then you go up the ladder to eggs and poultry, and then you'd be in beef and pork. So I'm not recommending way out there, but some animal food can be very strengthening to kidney.
What about bone broth?
Bone broth is very important. Kidneys, just to add to this, kidneys govern the bones, says Oriental medicine. So any bone problem is a kidney problem. And so bone broth is really supporting that. And you can buy it already made. It's not like you have to get animal bone to
And it
do
can be
that.
fish or chicken bone. I mean, it doesn't have to
Yes,
be
yeah,
mammal.
yeah. Well, yes, chicken is animal to me, but
Well,
I'm
mammal.
not, yeah. Uh, but yes, it's going to have to be bone from some animal source. And chicken bone broth is readily available. It can be organic. It's almost tasteless. And in the past, we've made chicken bone broth at home. We've cooked chicken and enjoyed some chicken. And then we broke the bones and put them and cooked them for hours and made a broth with other herbs and some root vegetables. And it can be a powerhouse tonic without making you too tight. Koi cuckoo, one of
Would
the
you say every day?
macrobiotic old soups for women after childbirth, is from fish, carp soup with root vegetables. It's the same idea, same idea. It's very strengthening to blood and bones.
Would you say every day?
Say what?
Would you say every day?
Every day.
Every day. No, once again, you'll start to feel it. So maybe like a lot of things, you can start gradually, you know, once every 2 or 3 days. And then you can go to once every 2 days, and then once a day, and then backtrack and see how that your experience is with that. And in terms of vitality, warmth, strength, and endurance. Those would be examples of kidney getting more tonified.
Thank
Any
you.
other hand raised, Ganat, in the last 2 minutes?
2 minutes.
So Michelle has been waiting. Michelle, do you want to go?
Yeah, I'll be quickly, and that's just to make a comment here that I do get acupuncture almost weekly, and then I was taught about your condition can be too damp or heat, which I thought was interesting, and I was doing macrobiotic, but still having a damp condition. I wanted to know, and I did have a neighbor that went through chemo, and it was horrible. And I tried to get him a consultation with Denny, and Denny passed, and then I just didn't know what to do. But anyway, that's a comment, quick. And I want to know more about the program. I'm looking forward to the one on menopause. You had said that women, when they get older, they go from yin to yang. I look forward to getting that information.
Good. Yeah, that program will be posted this spring. I did a 12-hour course on women's health, and it's just about ready to be posted. So you'll get a notice on that if you're on my mailing list.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Acupuncture is great. It's very supportive. I still love doing acupuncture. It's a subtle healing art, and it depends on the acupuncturist. It's not that acupuncture is great, really. It's the acupuncturist. You really need to find one that you resonate with and respond well to.
Yeah, maybe a subsequent talk, Ganat, we can focus mainly on Chinese medicine and acupuncture, the meridians, and how people can help understand
That's a
themselves.
great idea.
and
Mhm.
their well-being, and also as a introduction to what Michael will be teaching. And we
Mm,
appreciate everybody's time this morning. Uh, we know it's late for some people and very early for other people. And Michael and I started at 10 our time, so it's just early mid-morning. Thanks, Michael, for your expertise, your sharing your experiences, your wisdom, your insights. We value somebody who's been involved in personal healing as well as social change for over 50 years now. And we're glad that we were able to make this time available. Ganat hosting us and
Yes.
all of us coming
I,
together for this similar kind of
mm,
vision and
mm.
goal.
Yeah,
I'm so appreciative.
I would like to thank Anant for doing this. And I should remind people I've done 2 other presentations on the forum, and I encourage everybody to look at those. One is called 49%, 51% approach
Mhm.
to greatest health, and the other is macrobiotics vegan. Those are 2 presentations I did, and I encourage everyone to look at those. You'll get more of my viewpoints.
Yeah, there, you can look on the Ganat's YouTube channel and you can
Right.
find
That's right.
for Michael's previous presentations.
So thank you, Ganat, for making these forums happen. I really appreciate them a lot.
Oh, Michael, it's just a pleasure. It makes it all worthwhile. Thank you so much.
Yeah, again, we're
It's
sorry
very,
that we can't entertain more questions, but we've
yeah, yeah.
look forward to you participating with Michael's future ongoing teachings.
Yeah. Thank
I'm
you.
definitely in. Thank you. Thank you, Lenny, and thank you, Michael. It's a real
Yes.
pleasure. So I ask anyone who would like to remain with us, we'll chat now amongst ourselves. And Michael and Lenny will go off and do a macrobiotic lunch. Enjoy yourselves. It's been great. I so appreciate you. Thank you very much. Okay. Hmm. And I got to stop
Did you
this
start
recording.
the